1:00, 1:01. Call this special meeting to order. Let the record reflect that 3 members are present with Mr. Angel and Ms. Farley joining in by phone. And Megan, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Approval of agenda or adjustments.
Motion that we approve the agenda as is.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Harvey and a second by Mr. Brogan to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining. Let the record reflect by a 5-0 vote. The agenda has been approved. Now, moving on to old business. Discussion and possible action to approve financial report. Ms. McClung?
First of all, I want to say thank you for having this special meeting to allow me to get this completed and in a good standing.
So before we go any further, can we move that speaker closer to Ms. McClung?
Yep, we got it.
Thank you.
All right.
Is that better?
It still sounds like you're in the other end of the hall.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Yeah. We had to figure out which one it was. We good? Okay. So the biggest positive off of the financials for this year is we were able to grow our fund balance and have a 2.5 million carryover, or approximately 2.5 million. The fund balances on funds 61, 71, and 51 are negative balances, but that's just due to the timing on when we expend the funds versus when we collect the funds. So the counties have to pay for all the expenses up front, and then you send in reimbursements or make draws off the accounts. And the timing of those just make those negative fund balances. So they're not legitimately negative fund balances. They just show up on your report as negative fund balances. I was just speaking in general, but it's on the it's on the balance sheet, which is the third sheet back in the notes. So go past page 11, and then it's the third sheet after that. One more thing. Should be that one on the back right there. The total fund balances are at the bottom of that page. The general is 2.9 million, and right above that you can see that there's 2.5 million of unassigned. So we're looking at these lines, right? And then in Fund 61, you can see it's a negative 135,000 fund balance. Fund 71, it's a negative 513, and Fund 51, it's a negative 48. Like I said, those are just due to the fact that we have to pay those expenses up front out of county funds prior to getting it back from each individual entity. The 65 is the school funds. They operate those at their each individual schools, and we just pull them onto the financials at the end of the year. So all three of the schools have a $418,000 balance.
And so that 65, the school fund, what type of expenses are those used for, those funds used for?
That's your school level funds, so that's what they use operating at the school. So that includes all of your, any activity funds, any school funds. At the elementary level, it would be like, any fundraising. At the high school level, it would have all the sports funds, all of your funds that any class has raised and carried forward, or any profit that they make off of anything that they sell.
Okay.
Capital projects fund, I'm assuming is SBA stuff.
Yeah, capital projects is SBA, which all the projects we have right now will net zero when it's said and done. But once we get into the roof project, of course, we pledged the 50,000 for that. So it just shows as a negative because we have some outstanding invoices with the SBA, and it's just a timing thing on when the month ended versus when we get the money back. If you look on page 6, the net position for the county grew by 4.2 million. This was a lot to do with our assets, and the construction in process, because the construction, especially at the high school, is going to raise your asset value for the county quite a bit. And then also you have the Talk Gym that raised it, and eventually you'll have Hinton Areas renovation that will all raise your asset values. On page 7, you can,
So
I'm sorry.
according to this, all properties combined are valued at 32 million.
No, that's the net position. So that's the whole net position of the county. So that would be all assets minus liabilities for the county. So that's not just assets, that's all operating funds as well. On page 7, there's pie charts that break out the revenue and the expenditures, just so you can kind of see where the revenue comes from and then where the expenditures go. A good portion of our revenue come from grants and state aid, and then 51% of our expenditures go to instruction, and another 43 to student supporting services. So the majority of our budget goes to student instruction and supporting student services. The fund balance, now I'm on page 8 if you want to go closer. The fund balance in the general fund increased from 2.1 million to 2.9 million. So it's a $0.8 million increase, and that's primarily due to being able to clear a bunch of outstanding checks that were still on the books from when we changed bank accounts that shouldn't have been on there anymore. The special projects
I
fund.
understand that. You had $0.8 million of checks that people lost, or I mean,
No, it was more of an accounting error. They should have been cleared, so they were still showing as outstanding checks in the past few years, and they shouldn't have been outstanding checks. So outstanding checks count towards your fund balance, but they're as unspendables. And now, since they're cleared because they should have been cleared a long time ago, that's now available money to spend. So this was just a correction from prior years. I think it dated back to 2019-20 when the bank accounts got changed. That was the change that we found, and while I needed a little bit more time for the financial statements.
But this 2.9 is not considered carryover.
No, because some of that 2.9 is unspendable, so it's about 2.5 carryover. Unspendable is just, it's already allocated. The special revenue fund decreased from 197,000 to a negative 135,000 balance, and like I said before, that's just the timing. Same thing with the ESSER funds. It went from a negative $210,000 balance to a negative $513,000 balance. That's also due to timing of getting the funds back. The school activity fund, which is the school funds, increased theirs from 370 to 418, and that's due to more fundraising and stuff. Now that COVID's over, they have all been able to collect a little bit more money. The capital project decreased from negative 4,000 to negative 48,000. Once again, just the timing. The assets, this is what you're asking about, Kenny. Our assets raised 4.5 million. So the construction in progress and the finished construction during just last year raised our asset value by $4.5 million. On the statement of net position, which is the first spreadsheet after those pages, that's where it kind of breaks down what the total net position is. The total net position ended up $32 million. And you can see that the assets are broken out at the top, then the liabilities, and that kind of shows you which part of what's what.
So again, I was hung up on some next we looking at. Okay.
Right there. So the total net position is 32.8 million. The assets are at the top, and it breaks it down by what it's all, like where it's all at. So cash is part of it. Inventory and receivables is part of it. Actual assets are part of it. And then your liabilities are listed below. The next page is the statement of activities. That just kind of breaks out the expenses over categories so you can see exactly where the money goes. You know, the majority of our expenses go directly toward instruction or supporting services. The supporting services is broken down into several different categories. It shows students, instructional staff, general admin, school admin, central services, operations, student transportation, and other. And then there's also the food service cost and the community services. The next page is the balance sheet. So this shows your standing in each fund. And the next page after that is just the supporting for the balance sheet. The next page after that is
What's the community services, the 27,240?
I'd have to go back and look, but sometimes that's also included in what we spend for activities like sports. So if the county, which we did spend a little bit on the football facility and the water and stuff, that's probably that, but I can double check that and get back to you.
Okay, I just wondered if that had to do with the library and the funding we provide
Oh,
them.
part of that could be, yes.
Okay.
I can double check that number and let you know for sure. Sorry, I just don't know that off the top of my head. The next page is the revenue and expenditures breakout. In Fund 11, our total revenues were 14.6 million and the expenditures were 13.4 million. So we did spend less than we brought in. The next several pages are just required accounting procedure changes and about the retirement and the county's obligation to that. If you flip all the way back to the back, there's a section that says required supplemental information, and then there's some more spreadsheets behind that. The first spreadsheet is uh, the schedules of revenue with the budget and the general fund. This is kind of what I wanted to explain about the budget. So we under budgeted 600,000 on revenue and over budgeted 2.2 million on expenses. So on our budgets, we're very, like, historically, Summers County has been very conservative by overestimating expenses and underestimating revenue. And that's a good thing when it comes to budgets, because that keeps you more in balance so that you don't think you have more money than you actually do. And it's been this way for a while. So most of the time in your budget, your revenue is probably understated and your expenses are probably overstated. Does that make sense? So that's the general fund, and then the next couple pages show the special revenue fund and the schools funds and the ESSER fund. There's a section of pages after that that has to do with the state regulations for the ones that look like this. Those. These are just the percentages of the money that goes towards retirement. So those deposits don't actually flow through the county. They go directly to the retirement board. And this is just required by the state to show the percentage of what they get versus what we're spending. And that's several pages there that has that, along with the notes that supplement that. At the very end, the last 3 pages, there's the schedule of change in school activities funds. That breaks down your cash balances per school, so you can kind of see where each school stands. Of course, the high school has the majority of the money because they have half the students, and a lot of that more than likely has to do with the sports accounts because they do fundraise quite a bit. The next page after that is all of your federal grants. It breaks it down by your total expenses per grant. Now, some of these are already completely used. They just carry through until they're expired on the state side. And then the final page is the state grants, and it breaks it down the same way. This one actually gives you a little bit more information. It has the total grant award, how much was actually received and expended this year, and then the ending. So in general, moving forward, the budget is pretty tight because we don't have the inflow of the ESSER money. So every chance we get, we need to reevaluate personnel, make cuts where we can. Then the increase in charter schools continue to hurt public schools' bottom line. So we just had to write a check to the West Virginia Virtual Academy for $20,000, and that only paid for like 2.47 kids last year. We have to give 100% of what we receive from state aid plus our county portion to the charter schools if they receive the student after October. So we're giving out more to them than we're actually using per student. So that will continue to hurt if we have a lot of students registered in virtual schools. And then also the governor just added the virtual school or the charter schools to be allowed to receive the SBA funding. So that will also hurt public schools' chances in getting any funding from the SBA as well, because it puts more people into the pool. Every time there's a charter school approved, the budgets get reevaluated, and our state aid as well as all the federal programs get readdressed, so we get less money every time there's a new charter school. So going forward, we need to look at the building costs, what it costs to run buildings. I know we moved ahead last meeting to try to offload the middle school building that we're not using. We need to continue looking at stuff like that to save money for stuff that's not directly impacting students. The construction in progress should be done most of it should be done this coming school year. The high school should be done definitely this school year, and then hopefully the roof project will be too. Hinton area should be wrapping up in the next month, so at the end of next year, the assets should be quite a bit more than they are now. And then with the funding ending for ESSER that has to be allocated by today, there will be no more funding coming in for that. So all of that will go back into county, which I think we've done a really good job at stopping some of those expenses. That'll just be a transition for the next couple years as to what students got used to in the COVID era versus what reality is after COVID. And same thing with personnel that was in the COVID that's not now. We'll just have to keep addressing that year after year to get to where we need to be. Questions?
I'm sure you've probably seen the report that you give that to the administration. Last training you guys had. Have you seen that?
I have. I did
It's
reach
so
out.
Tremendously informative.
I reached out to Deidre, which is the one that has made it. So it is an Excel sheet that she inputs all the data into on every time before their board meeting. It's possible. The only downside here is where you have less staff, your CSBO has multiple jobs. So I don't know that the time allowed for that will allow at every meeting. I do think that is very good information. You guys should see it. I'm just not sure that it will be available every meeting because of the data input it takes. There's no program that connects our program to a spreadsheet. So you have to physically print the reports and input all the data.
But that wouldn't necessarily have to be done by the CSBO, correct?
It wouldn't. It could be
Okay.
done by anybody. It's
And
just,
then just reviewed for accuracy.
right. When Deidre gets done, she's making a master spreadsheet. She is supposed to share that with me, and I will share it with whoever gets the job. And we'll try to figure out how the easiest way to do that is to at least get you that information, hopefully at least once a month, if not at least quarterly. But those spreadsheets are very informative and also breaks it down in a way that's much easier to understand than the Weavis reports that we currently have. We're working on it.
I guess you kind of answered my next question was how labor intensive. We just, we're the fiduciary responsibility that board members have. I just feel like that's knowledge that we need.
It is. There is a report that you can run, and the State Department is helping us get that up to date for Summers County, but it's nowhere near as user friendly as what you have seen from those reports. But yes, there really needs to be a better way to get you guys information on a more timely manner. We're just working through how to do that because, like I said, Weavis doesn't really communicate well with other programs. So the time that it takes to actually make spreadsheets and stuff is just the real downfall here due to small staff.
So I know preliminary, you were saying we were gonna have around a $2 million carryover. Can you spend a little time explaining to me how to do it? Is it all because of underestimated numbers and overestimated numbers? Is it all attributed to $1 million difference?
No, most of that is that outstanding checks that we were able to clear off the balances from several years ago. So a lot of the difference in the change is strictly from changing past financial statements. Like what was considered unspendable in the past is not considered unspendable now because it's
Actually, you
cleared.
said $8 million, was that right?
$0.8 million was a change, yes.
So.
So 500,000,
Carryover actually is 1.7, so that point now makes us 2.5.
the carryover would have, you're at 2.9, so the carryover would have been 2.1. Your fund balance is what the 0.8 million was a change in the fund balance, not the carryover.
Gotcha.
So the fund balance is actually 2.9 million. So it would have been 2.1 million. And then your carryover is about the 2.5 now. And we were able, a lot of that is due to being able to clear about $500,000 of outstanding checks that really shouldn't have been on the books for the last 3 years. So while your expenses were a lot less than your revenue, being able to do that also grew your fund balance quite a bit.
I'm curious, I'm sorry. I'm curious how that wasn't caught during audits.
It was on the audits. It was just as an unspendable amount of money, which
Okay.
shows on your balance, but not on your spendable balance. So it was on there as outstanding checks, but they really shouldn't have been outstanding checks. And as to why an auditor hadn't caught that, I don't know the answer to that. That amount of outstanding checks from that long ago really should have been caught. And
It should have been.
it could have
Mhm.
been something that I don't know what the auditor and past CSBOs have discussed. Like it could have been discussed by the auditors. And if there was a reason for there to be outstanding checks, that's acceptable. You're allowed to have as many outstanding checks as is accurate. And the auditor really wouldn't know if that should be accurate or not because they're not going to know
Right.
what checks were written. So like it really should
Okay.
have been cleared up in the past. It just hasn't been. And it was something that was made aware to me like within my first week of being here. And
Mhm.
we've just worked to clear it up for this year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anything else? Right.
Better than the days.
Is anybody, is this something we need to make a motion on
To approve the
to approve the
yeah.
financial report?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I will make that motion to approve the financial report.
All right.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Brogan and a second by Ms. Farley to approve the financial report. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstaining. Let the record reflect by a 5-0 vote, the financial report has been approved. Okay, now, item 4B, discussion, possible action to gift Lincoln School property to the city of Hinton.
Mr. Vice President, do you mind if we give you a quick update on what Mr. Metter found out from the city and then also from Mr. D'Antoni, the Bowles Rice attorney that deals with real estate? So
Yes,
I'll have Mr. Metter give you guys a quick overview. We'll go from there. Do I need to carry this over so I can hear it?
Probably.
Sorry.
You can come on over here.
Yeah.
I reached out to Chris Meadows of the city of Hinton and asked them if they would be interested in the Lincoln School property that we currently own. A few days later, he messaged me back and said that they were very interested in obtaining that property. So that's okay, great. So they have a meeting on October the 22nd to fully yes, vote on assuming that property. In the meantime, though, I reached out to Mark D'Antoni, our legal advisor when it comes to property. I sent him the current deed of that property. He took a look at it, and there's really no legal description of it. So what he wants to do is send down a paralegal to do a deed research on what we have. And then after that, we can proceed. But really, right now, we're just waiting for that clearance.
Is there any chance we can put that burden on the city to find out what we have, or just make sure that they would want them?
Well, I think it's more to protect us, I think, the way I understood it. I mean, I can ask him, but
And so if I can speak for a minute, just to be clear, this is not, even though we have it listed as the Lincoln School property, it's not the property where the Lincoln School sits.
that's correct. It's the building that's in question, plus the property around it, yeah. What we know
Right.
of.
There is a deed for the Lincoln School, and I'm just going off of my memory here. I can get my hands on that deed later, but it indicated that the Lincoln School and a right of way on one side, and then the boundaries are very close to that actual building for that particular piece of property. But as far as our boundaries go,
Yeah.
I realize we can't base our boundaries off of, well, this belongs to this piece of property goes with the Lincoln School, so everything else is ours. We can't say that without having something to back that up.
Right.
And I understood you to say they're going to send a paralegal in
Correct.
to do the deed research.
Yes, sir.
Do we know what that hourly cost is going to be for that paralegal?
I do not. I can find that out. They could actually send that person tomorrow, according to Mark D'Antoni.
And then that would probably, I would be curious to how much what the hourly rate's going to be, and does that start from the time they leave Charleston?
Okay.
I'd say more likely it does. Maybe this is why we still have the property. Because it costs you a fortune to get rid of it, to give it away.
I would assume that anytime there's window time, meaning they're driving, I would assume that that would be charged to whoever they're working for. Yeah. But we can check that out and go from there. Because the other thing else Mr. Metter's looking at is to make sure Mark helps with the guidance for the board with putting up the other property beside us for sale or gifting. But it sounds like gifting's out of the question. Now we're looking at selling, so we'll get you more information on that too.
Well, and my thoughts on the property around the Lincoln building. I understand they could come here and do the deed research, but I'm wondering if we could hire someone locally to do the deed research for us, and it may save us some money.
Okay, we can do that.
It's something we can discuss, if we wanted to look at it at our next meeting.
Well, what we can do is, it doesn't have to be an actual item. We just want it on this agenda because I believe one or two of you asked, and just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case, but
Yep.
after Mr. Metter made a phone call, it's like it's kind of murky right now with that property. But the good news is the first hurdle getting cleared that the city is willing to take that property on. That's the good news. I think Mr.
Right.
Angel, you and I talked about it this summer when they did a news story on that property and it got put out there. I don't think anybody meant to do this, but they said that we own that property and we do not own that. But since that Lincoln Association is defunct now, I think the city is more than willing to help out both entities, the school board with part of the property and then the rest of it from that association to take that property on. So that's the good news about it. But we'll just get through the murkiness of what property line is aware and work with the city on that. And maybe the city would be willing to help us, like you said, Mr. Brogan, with that part of it, you know?
They might be willing to split the cost to find out exactly what they're gonna get.
Yeah.
And we have a county surveyor that would potentially be able to do that deed research for us.
Okay.
Okay,
Just wanna
anything
leave it
else?
Discussion.
Yeah, we'll leave that on for,
Actually, I'm supposed to be taking that county surveyor a check later for JBT.
Mhm.
I can talk to him.
All right.
I won't put that in the notes, but okay.
All right, so this will remain on the for the next agenda.
Okay.
Moving on to item 5, personnel.
We just have one person there for you for substitute teaching.
Employment for substitute teacher. Tyler Turner, effective date 10/1/24.
Make a motion that we approve the recommendation for personnel.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Harvey and a second by Mr. Brogan to approve employment of substitute teacher here in personnel. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstaining. Let the record reflect by 5-0 vote. Motion carries. All right. Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in
The time
favor?
is 1:37 PM.
All right.